You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Look, if you've got prescriptions, the Walmart app is your place to manage them. Transfer your scripts, refill them, and have them delivered straight to you. Migraines managed. Allergies alleviated. Dermatology, Derma delivered. Ding dong. Is that your pizza? Nope. Walmart pharmacy delivery with a refill. Switch to Walmart and manage your prescriptions in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new. Delivery not available for all prescriptions. Exclusions apply.
Welcome to Bunch Formation, the newest college football podcast. I am Chris Vannini, and I am trying to play college football 26 with every rare free moment that I have.
And I am David Ubben, and I am finally off of the DFW tarmac, back from Big 12 Media Days. Chris, a harrowing journey back home. I thought I'd be fine with a direct flight. I arrived back in my domicile at 2 a.m. on late Wednesday night. I guess Thursday morning. I'm dying.
Yeah, tough travel for David there. We were in my backyard for Big 12 Media Days this week. We're going to talk about that. David was here. Justin Williams, our colleague, was here. We had an eventful week at Big 12 Media
Yeah.
Days. A lot happened.
We were accidentally. A lot more people were talking about us, Chris, than we anticipated. Let's just say that.
Yes, and we will address some of that. Also, several people at Big 12 Media Days, by the way, stopped us to say they love the new show. We really appreciated hearing that. It's one of the reasons we wanted to do a new show, because the same thing happened when we were together in Atlanta for the national championship game. So hearing from everybody was awesome. But we're going to talk about the Big 12 itself, kind of the state of this conference, what happened at Media Days, take you behind the scenes. We are not going to talk about College Football 26 yet, because David has not played it much at all. He was obviously busy and traveling. My review of the game is up on The Athletic. We will talk about College Football 26 next week, and we will have a guest from EA Sports on the show to talk about it as well. As for this episode, though, if you haven't checked out the show notes, we got timestamps in there for you to jump around. If you want to get to something specific, send emails for all feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com or bunchformation on pretty much every social media. We have gotten a couple of emails from listeners. We're going to get to those in a soon future episode, just because we wanted to jump into Big 12 Media Day stuff this week. And please give us a 5-star review. We will read every one on the show. And we got a new one from Tim is Cooler Than You, who wrote in, appreciate the banter and conversation. Great hosts of the show. In the episode about college basketball video games coming back, loved the idea of getting Ben Hauermiller on to talk about NCAA football ending and what happened in the office. Thanks, guys. Love the content. So yeah, we will have somebody, not Ben, but we'll have somebody else from EA Sports on the show next week. So with that, let's get into the big main part of the show here. We're going to talk about Big 12 Media Days. And for that, we are going to jump into, literally, the media scrum.
Why I don't read the newspaper? Because it's garbage.
And let's start by taking listeners behind the scenes of this setup. So Big 12 Media Days is generally considered the best among media members for access among the Power Four. Typically, you can get anybody one-on-one you want to, and everybody's willing to talk and do stuff. It's great. It's the complete opposite of SEC Media Days, which will be next week, which is basically just a TV show. You basically get no one-on-one time.
Everyone hates it.
So we've always liked doing Big 12. But this year, the Big 12 is nice enough to give us and several other media outlets their own room and have every coach and every group of players come in for 15 minutes of chatting. We found out about that just a few days before Media Days, and that's the reason David even came. So, Ubben, just how did you feel kind of about the setup?
I mean, I was excited for it because, and again, I don't want to get too far down the weeds with media inside baseball, but those rooms have traditionally been reserved for media partners at most leagues. But this is a situation. Yes, the TV partners. That's Fox, ESPN, CBS. I guess NBC for the Big Ten now, and Notre Dame doesn't have media days, obviously. But so anyway. So I knew kind of what we were getting ourselves into with having a bunch of coaches come in and having the players come in. A very new setup. No other league certainly since I've been a professional, since 2009, I've never seen a league do this. And it makes sense. And I think it worked for the Big 12. The Big 12 understands, we don't have the same big brands as the Big 10, as the SEC, but they still have good football. And if you give people access, guess what? I mean, Chris, how many national media people were at Big 12 Media Days this week? I mean, it was like 20. It was like everybody. Everyone was there. Quite
a few because of that. Like,
literally because of
that. You need as many people to talk about you as possible, And so that's why the Big 12, I don't want to say acted like a Group of Five league in that sense, but Group of Five Media Days are always a lot of fun because you can get whatever you want. And so we talked to every coach except for Deion Sanders. We talked to every group of players that came through. And I think we got a lot of really good stuff, some of which is on The Athletic right now, some of which won't be up for a while, but
hugely valuable. I mean, I think the Big 12, this is part of why I think the Big 12 really understands media, understands strategy, because it was really, really valuable. It's exclusive stuff. It's really valuable to see coaches' faces, to spend time with them, sit down with them, especially at media days where there's 1,000 different people and there's a lot of scrums. I know probably half the coaches in the Big 12. I got a chance to meet some of the ones I had not met before. I'm trying to think. I don't think I'd met Kyle Whittingham in person. I talked to him a couple times. Of course, Scott Frost, I had not met. We'll talk about him here in a little bit. But there's a handful of coaches in the league that I didn't know, a lot that I did know and hadn't seen in a little while. So it was really good, and that's just valuable for us. Like, I think some of the people, I talked to some of the other national folks, and some of them literally just use the time to kind of catch up with coaches and talk off the record and just kind of build those relationships. And so we kind of did a little bit of both, where there's some of that, but a lot of stuff that we needed and we're working on and we're curious about, and just talking to coaches about what's going on in the sport. It was media days have not been fun or interesting since probably the first time I ever went to one. It would have been the Big 12 in 2008. They're kind of a slog. It's hard to do real meaningful work. We're not there to we're going to go see the coaches or see the players. It's like, I want to do journalism there, and you can't really do it in most senses. So I don't really like going to a lot of media days. But when you have a setup like this, you can really do stuff and talk to people and have meaningful conversations. And it was fun and interesting for the first time in 15 years. And I really enjoyed it. The Big 12, I think, intends to do that in the future. I think more leagues should do it. I doubt more will. Maybe the ACC will. I hope they do, because it's good for the league. It's a smart move. And if they do it, I'm going to be fighting tooth and nail to get there, because it's so valuable.
Yeah. If you are not the Big Ten or the SEC, you need to, we live in the attention economy. You need to have people talk about you. And it's why the Big 12 for a while now has also gone first among these media days. Most of the coaches, they're on vacation at this time of year. The first 2 weeks of July is the only time they really have off. And so they're kind of irked to come in. Sonny Dykes said he had Sonny Dykes was literally in Cabo the day before media days and had to come back. So the coaches don't always love it. But the Big 12 has been very media savvy. We just say this to try to give people kind of a behind the scenes of what it's like.
Yeah.
And why that strategy is important, because when you see the Big Ten being silent and Tony Petitti never wanting to talk about anything, suddenly the momentum publicly turns against his playoff auto bid idea. He's going to probably be asked about and talk about it a lot in 2 weeks, but because the Big 12 got to go first, they got to again set the tone on what the playoff conversation is going to be for the next couple of weeks. So grateful for
And
the
I
Big
should
12.
note, Chris, we host a national podcast. We're going to pretty much only talk Big 12 on this show, not because like, oh, the Big 12, but like we learned a lot of interesting stuff. Some stuff happened. There's a lot to talk about in the Big 12. I don't think we're going to probably talk that much about the SEC next week, like actual media days, because they're not that interesting. And sometimes somebody pops off, most famously, I guess, like TJ Moe, like when Missouri was first year, talking a big game, all that stuff, like it's sort of interesting. Most of the time, it's just not that interesting. And when you can control the conversation and you learn a lot, I think it's just more interesting. So, hey, shout out to the Big 12. It was a savvy move. It was a smart move. I think it was effective. I think it worked for them. I think the media, everyone loved it. And, I think the only tough thing is it's like another hour for the coaches. And I'm sure it wasn't their favorite thing in the world, but I think it's good for them.
Well, not for every coach. And we're going to start off Big 12 Media Days by talking about one Deion Sanders, whom nobody was quite sure he was going to show up until basically the day of. We were supposed to, he was on our list to get him early in the morning. He was not there. I think he only did the podium press conference.
And, I think as far as I understand it,
in ESPN television. But the reason
he didn't do any of the breakout rooms. So.
Yeah, but which he did last year. But part of the reason it was so interesting is because his health situation. Mm-hmm. David, you've written about this. He hasn't been to Boulder in quite a while.
Since late April.
You asked him about it, and then became a headline. So let's go into that.
Yeah, it's been a weird sort of couple days. Chris, we're both pretty traditional journalists and generally write the story, don't be the story. And I don't think it's like necessarily like that big. I don't think anybody cares about me specifically because I was kind of an avatar in a lot of ways. Yeah, I know you don't. But I asked about the health and Deion, felt like the Athletic. I believe the exact quote was Athletic. Sometimes y'all are on that Bulljunk, I believe, which Bulljunk, tremendous phrase. I feel like more people should use it. Deion, endlessly entertaining. I don't think I would, in terms of reporters snapping at, or coaches snapping at me, or people being angry. I don't think that would make the top dozen in my career. It definitely wouldn't even be near the top one of the week. And so, it just isn't really that. I was sort of unfazed by it. I was like, okay, I don't really care about that, but what were average days like? And he was like, I'm living lovely, and didn't want to answer the question, which is fine. I don't think he would answer the question regardless of who asked it. But somebody had to ask it. And if you go watch Deion's time at the podium, Woodward and Bernstein were nowhere to be seen in the building, to say the least. But anyway, so we did this, and Deion didn't really want to talk about it. He said, I'm here to talk about my health, here to talk about my team, not my health, which is fine. That's his prerogative. It has to be asked. I'm doing my job. He's doing his job. I don't have any problem with that. But then then it becomes a media story because Deion is a larger, figure larger than life. And I did announce myself there. So nobody had to ask who did he snap at? It's very obvious in the 30-second clip. It was me. So then the New York Post just name checking me. The Daily Mail is very uncomfortable place to be. I didn't really talk about it. I didn't tweet about it because quite frankly, Chris, it wasn't that interesting. I didn't think in terms of Deion going toe to toe with reporters, that's not his top 5 since he's been at Colorado. He got mad at Nick Suss for not calling him Coach Prime at the SWAC media days 4 years ago. He tried to dress down Ed Werder for an imaginary thing that he wrote that Ed Werder hasn't written in 25 years. This is sort of Deion's thing, is he's a little combative with media. Some of it is showmanship. Some of it is legitimate. I think he doesn't like what the Athletic does, in part because of our story on the guys who left Colorado or got pushed out of Colorado.
For the people who maybe don't know the backstory, you've been a part of it. Our former colleague Max Olson, who was there at Media Days, have written a couple stories about the people who got pushed out of Colorado and just checked in on them. What was that experience like? Where are you at now? And a lot of Colorado people really didn't like that we wrote those.
No, one man's Bulljunk is another man's journalism, I always like to say. I feel like the story was extremely fair. I was on leave, so I didn't actually do the story that I think Colorado is actually most angry with. But like, I've definitely been trying to write clear-eyed and fair stuff and interesting stuff and informative stuff about Deion. I feel like there's, maybe not that many folks around Boulder that are doing stuff that isn't. Here's why Deion is the greatest coach in the history of college football. So we try to do some interesting stuff. So like, listen, I don't have any problem with it. I thought it was interesting. It was a little bit uncomfortable for me as people started writing about it, but nobody called me to ask for any. I didn't get calls from reporters. I don't need that. But it's like,
I feel like if they were going to write about you, I feel like they should have reached out to you.
I'm just saying it's weird to see the New York Post writing about like David Ubben. That's a weird thing. I don't think and it's like they did, like it's fine. They should. But anyway, all that to say, the reason why we asked in the big room is because Deion did not do the breakout rooms in the morning, which again, with his health and the uncertainty there, I'm not going to make any value judgments on that. We would have loved to have him. We'd have loved to see him do more national interviews, which he hasn't really done with traditional college football media very much of, which is fine. I don't know that much about what's going on with his health. It sounds like it was relatively serious, although maybe not life-threatening. So I'm not going to say like, oh, he should have been there longer. He was in the building for maybe 90 minutes. That's fine. He did get on a private plane and fly to do a commercial after. That's fine. He knows his body. He knows what he can do or not do.
Also, you did talk to athletic director Rick George, who said he will be back.
Yeah, and so that was the other interesting thing is, so Rick George has not done a ton of interviews either. He's done a few. I talked to him right after Deion got hired, kind of about how he did that. So Deion told ESPN, he did the podium, he did the coaches roundtable, and then he did 2 quick ESPN TV things. And I think after that, he was basically out of there. Shout out to being a broadcast partner. That's why they pay the billions of dollars, like legitimately. Anyway, so Deion basically said, like, I'm back now. I'm back. Like, I'm fulfilling my obligations. Okay, that's fine. You've been working with your program. It's weird that you haven't been in Boulder for literally more than 2 months. But, again, I don't know the health situation. I'm not going to cast aspersions on it. It is what it is. But it's weird that he's not there, and it's complicated. So anyway, he says he's back. I talked to Rick George. He's like, he's going to be back in a week or two, probably. That's probably right, right before camp. I'm sure he will be there for camp. If he's not there for camp, then something's really going on. But camp is also like the most physically taxing time of the year for coaches. So I'm sure the golf cart will be out there. Hopefully he's okay. So all in all, I don't know that we learned that much about what was going on. I think it was more just like fodder for people to talk about. People with Deion snaps at reporters, people get in, people like to talk about it and they're interested in it, and that's fine. So I didn't have any issue with it. It's I had to do my job, he had to do his job, and that's fine. So that's my thoughts. What did you make? You were in the building, Chris. What did you think?
I was standing next to Andy Staples as this press conference was going on, and I said I was very proud of you for asking the question that needed to be asked, because if anybody wants to look through the rest of the transcript and most of the questions that are asked,
it's so bad.
I'm fine with some of these settings to be like, some of it you can try to have some fun with. Like I'm not saying don't ever have any fun, but like it's the most important question for Colorado is your coach coming back, because he hasn't been on campus for a couple of months. That's a big deal.
I've never heard of this in any other context ever. And Deion is a very powerful person in Boulder. So I've never heard of a coach like not being in his town for 2 months.
I don't know about 2 months, but other than sometimes Mike Leach would just disappear. And he would end up being on vacation in like Africa or something like that. So, but you knew he was going to be back. It wasn't a health thing you were necessarily concerned about. So, hope Deion's okay.
I hope he's doing better.
Hope he's back.
He looked pretty good. I will say. He says he's lost some weight. He was looking maybe a little bit frail in some of the videos that they had posted before, but like he was walking normally. He seemed fine. I don't know what his energy level is at. Anybody can sort of muster it up for 90 minutes with the cameras on. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
there are people in his circle that know, and it's been pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah, but it had to be asked, and they don't like the Athletic because of some stories we've written, and that's fine. That is what it is. Certain questions are going to be asked, and coaches are usually ready for them and sometimes give an answer or don't. Kalani Sitake, BYU head coach, was asked 1 million times about Jake Retzlaff and his quarterback potentially transferring because of an honor code violation over premarital sex. And his answer every time was just like, love Jake. I can't speak for him. We're moving forward with, the team we've got. And that's it. Wouldn't even confirm or deny if Retzlaff is going to leave, but he had enough of a response there, and that's what it was. So that was the Deion situation. That was Ubben being on that Bulljunk.
One man's hit piece is another man's clear-eyed journalism about the most talked about program in college football.
You know what we should have. You know what you should have responded. You should have responded by saying, "Hey, it's actually Max Olson over there at ESPN
that
who
would have
wrote
been
the story."
legitimately I wouldn't have done that. The only thing we were talking about this, I think dropping a thanks for subscribing, Deion, I think would have been the only thing that I realistically, if I had thought about it at the moment, I would have done.
He does not know if he has a subscription.
I know he doesn't, but that would have been funny. It's like, it is what it is. But anyway.
Shout out Max Olson, our good buddy, great journalist.
Yes.
Anything else on Deion,
Chris? I don't nothing else.
So let's
ask you on.
We'll get to another one in first, but let's get to Texas Tech because they were one of the biggest stories coming into and out of Big 12 Media Days as well because of the big money they're spending, how open they're being about it. Cody Campbell, the billionaire trustee / former player / bankroller to all this stuff, he showed up on the second day, which wasn't even Texas Tech's day, and did media interviews. So they're very open about this. And so one of the things we did, considering we had every coach alone for 15 minutes, was ask them to speak anonymously about what they think of Texas Tech. We talked to, we got about a dozen answers out of coaches on it, and most of them were just kind of openly jealous. And we're like, yeah, I do the same thing. There was a great quote here from one coach. He says, quote, "Good for them. Hell, if I had Cody Campbell, I'd be doing sleepovers at his house. Hey, best buddy, how can I help you? You blanking me? I don't blame them. If you're going to buy a player, buy the right one." And they've bought some good ones. That was a great quote we got. We had Joey McGuire, the coach at Texas Tech. We asked him, I said, "Do you think people are jealous of what you guys going on?" He said, quote, "I do think people feel a little threatened. The last box to check is Texas Tech has never won the Big 12, never played for the Big 12 championship. That's why this year is so crucial." And another coach has said to us, if they don't win the Big 12, holy cow. What did you kind of make of the responses we got about Texas Tech?
People care a lot. We didn't have any coach being like, whatever, it's about us. Every coach was like, oh man, because this is talent acquisition. It's the most important thing in the sport, and they're doing it in a way that not a lot of other people can do. It's like bringing Victor Wembanyama to a junior high basketball camp. It's like, what are we supposed to do? They're like, this is ridiculous, So I think every coach was kind of throwing their hands up, but they seem to be kind of in a bunch of camps. There was the jealous camp of like, hey, I wish I had it. We would be doing it if we could too. But there's also the skepticism camp. And, last year, Arizona State, as we noted in the story, won the Big 12 with a payroll that was in the middle of the Big 12 to kind of in the middle to back half of the Big 12. Texas A&M most famously spent a ton of money on a class under Jimbo. Didn't work very well. Didn't go very well. Also, Ohio State won the national championship last year. I think, again, what this money does not guarantee you anything, but it obviously gives you large advantages. And I think every coach is understanding of that. I think there's a lot of questions about the sustainability. I think that's a little in the weeds more than it's worth getting into in terms of front-loading contracts and the house settlement and NIL Go and the clearinghouse and how is this all going to play out. But as it stands, for 2025, Texas Tech is taking a big swing, and they have some of the deepest pockets in college football. I don't think it's necessarily that other schools don't have more money. I think Texas Tech seems to be more willing to spend, largely because of Cody and the oil money and the motivation. And, it's nice to have a former player have $15 billion in oil companies and say, I want to make our school a power. So, again, I think Texas Tech is one of the 5, maybe 3 most interesting programs in college football this year because of this. It's like them and Texas, and I don't know. I'm not even sure after that. Arch obviously is going to be a guy that a lot of people have eyes on. Yeah, North Carolina. I mean, but I could Chris, you could see North Carolina though get into October, and if they're just kind of and Bill Belichick is on to Mercer or whatever, I could see people being like, all right, I can see it running low a little bit, but we'll see. So anyway, I think this is Texas Tech right now is getting a little bit of the treatment that we saw with Colorado in year 1 of Deion, where they're so interesting. And we're going to write a ton about everything that's going on there. And at Colorado, like the first year, everything was interesting. And Deion, and how does Deion run his program? And how does he adjust all this? With Texas Tech, it's the money. The money is interesting. What did you get in the portal? How do you make all this work? What are the dynamics here? Did you recruit the right guys? That's the biggest question that a lot of coaches had is, did you bring in the right guys?
And that's a quote from one of the coaches to us. And by the way, we have this full story linked in the show notes if you want to read it. Please read it. He said, a coach said, ridiculous. They're not just outbidding. They're outbidding other teams by 3x. Wild, but will be interesting. If the players are good kids about the right things about winning, I think it'll go great. If they're about themselves, the first time adversity hits will define them. That's kind of the
I
big
don't think
question
you can know that until you start playing games.
That's always the concern coaches have had about building through the portal, which is how committed are these guys going to be? And actually, the best quote about Texas Tech was on the record. It was Deion Sanders up at the podium.
Deion was great on this.
Deion, who is a big fan of Joey McGuire. They both obviously were Texas high school football coaches. I believe Joey McGuire was kind of recruiting Shedeur for a bit at one point, or at least involved in some way. They've known each other for a while, and Deion loves him. And so Deion, I think, was asked about Texas Tech at the podium, and he says, yeah, Joey got some money, spending that money. I love it. Can you send a few of those dollars to us so we can get some of those players too? Which was a very, very funny, earnest moment, I thought. But yeah, it's really interesting. We turned around that story very quickly because we went in with that being a plan. Like, let's ask these coaches what they think about Texas Tech, because they just signed that five-star recruit to a guaranteed 3-year contract that may be worth $5 million, maybe worth $2 million, depending on who you talk about. So like, it's a big story right now. So they were really interesting, and they're going to be a team that everybody's going to be paying a lot of attention to.
Yeah, I liked talking to the coaches, but the coaches wanted to talk about it. Sometimes, I've done a lot of these like coaching confidentials. Obviously, this one was a little bit like shooting fish in a barrel because they're coming to you and you have them in a private setting. Most of their coaching confidentials, I'm like calling around and sometimes coaches can get you on the phone, and sometimes coaches can, and it is a little different. But they wanted to talk about it. We didn't have a single coach that was like, every coach was like, can you guys believe this either? That was pretty much the reaction from everybody. As soon as you asked Texas Tech, everybody was like, oh man. Like, they know what's going on too.
And you know who was awesome about it? The Texas Tech players.
Yeah.
Like they know what everybody's saying about them. We had a couple of them in the room with us, and they were maybe the most fun bunch of players we had.
Lee Hunter, awesome. Lee Hunter, shout out to Lee Hunter. Baron Morton, by the way, told us that he bought 150 acres in his hometown. He's like, I got a little 150 acre spot. And Lee Hunter was like, a little 150 acres? What are you talking about, man? It was awesome. I love those guys. It was good spending time with them. It's going to be super fun to watch because, again, the Texas Tech football, we talk about Texas Tech softball. I don't think it's to that degree. This is not like a dream team. It's a very expensive, very good team. I don't think it's like, I don't know how this team can't win the Big 12. It's just that if you're paying that much money, you should have results commensurate with that money.
And I don't think $30 million in the Big 12 is equal to $30 million in the SEC, because you have to build up you don't have the inherent depth that comes with a place like Texas Tech, or you're able to get 4 stars like it's nothing, and then you're adding the money on top of that. So that's why it's going to be really interesting, kind of how they hold up. Anything else on Tech before we move to the next one?
No. Should we talk about America's favorite quarterback turned head coach going back home?
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
So we talked to Scott Frost last. He was among the coaches who came in, and he made it clear very quickly he did not want to talk about Nebraska.
He did this, we should note, Chris, by saying, I don't want to talk about Nebraska. I think I asked him about, like, I don't remember what the first question was, but
I don't know the first, but my first question was, so like, anyway, Scott Frost says some things about Nebraska. Basically, he admitted that he regretted leaving UCF for Nebraska, which is all we were looking for and kind of expected, because I was there on the field in 2017 when they beat Memphis to win the American Championship and stay undefeated, and everybody knew Scott Frost was going to Nebraska. There were a bunch of Nebraska fans in the stadium, and Scott Frost is in tears and says after the game, like, basically, like, he didn't want to leave, but home was calling. And everybody understood that, and UCF fans weren't mad that he left. Everybody understood it. And so I wanted to kind of go back to that decision, not necessarily just like, hey, things weren't good at Nebraska. What's up with that? We didn't ask him about that.
We weren't interested in like what went wrong at Nebraska. What was the deal? It was more like you were talking to him more about UCF.
So I asked him, like, take me, as I'm asking that, talking about that scene in 2017 about how you didn't want to leave. He goes, I don't want to talk about Nebraska. And then he says, quote, I didn't want to leave UCF. By the way, the story linked in the show notes. He says, I didn't want to leave UCF. I always said I would never leave unless it was someplace you could go and potentially win a national championship. I got tugged in a direction to go and try to help my alma mater, and I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a good move. I'm lucky to get back to a place where I was a lot happier, which I think everybody would agree with. Like, you know, like other than maybe Nebraska fans. You asked him what he learned at Nebraska. He said he didn't want to talk about Nebraska. Then you said, okay, well, what have you learned since UCF? And he said, don't take the wrong job and basically make sure you have good people around you. And we all kind of chuckled when he said it. It was kind of a dry sense of humor thing. I tweet that quote out. It blows up way, way bigger in a way that I expected. I mean, I know Nebraska's got a big fan base and everything like that, but it became a big thing. Scott was not happy with us, which is his right. I don't want to get too much into that. I don't want to make this a bigger thing than it was. And anything he said to us otherwise, I'll keep between us, keep private for now. But yeah, so it was another coach who was not exactly happy with us. But it's hard. Like, I was surprised he didn't come in with an answer of like, you know, I love my alma mater. It didn't work out. I'm happy to be home. Like he was very. And he was like,
it's not a hard, like, he was like, he had a much higher degree of difficulty coming into Big 12 Media Days than I thought Scott Frost did, just for the record.
Yeah.
That's a much more difficult situation to be in.
And Frost said at his opening press conference, too, when he got the job, I don't want to talk about Nebraska, but like, it's media days. Like, you're going to be asked about Nebraska a lot. And it wasn't like, and again, we weren't asking like, hey, why was everything bad in Nebraska? It's him leaving UCF for Nebraska is part of his UCF story. It's not like he went from Houston to Nebraska to UCF and we're asking about the past. No, I wanted to ask about his decision to leave UCF because he was really happy there. I saw it like that. That's all we were trying to get to. And so it turned into a whole thing with UCF and Nebraska fans and a lot that in a way that I didn't expect it would get that big, but once it got out there, it was quick, and it was a direct quote. Included the rest of the quote in the next tweet. Like, it wasn't weren't trying to pull a fast one on him, but anyway, that's what that was. I think he could. I mean, like that team, like in 2017, That team was loaded, man.
Yes.
They had tons of NFL players. And I asked him, like, if you hadn't left, what would have happened? And he's like, man, we were rolling and we would have been rolling for a while. And he's right. Now, if the portal existed back then, he was like, we would have lost half those guys. But he also pointed out we were a G5 team then. Now we're in the Big 12. And kids are wanting to come to UCF. And kids that are coming to UCF don't want to leave UCF. And that applies to Frost too, I think. So
yeah,
it's going to be a really interesting second run. Like retreads.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to go. You could tell me any outcome, and I think I'd believe it.
So, some people get really down on retreads, but I think they're like 50-50 on when they work or not. Like Mac Brown's second North Carolina run was fine. Bill Snyder's second run at Kansas State was fantastic. There's been other second runs that were really bad. So it could go anywhere. Again, this is an incredibly deep conference. I don't know where anybody's going to finish.
Yeah.
But
Petrino, by the way, really good, then really bad.
Yeah, but I know Scott Frost did a really, really, really good job the first time around there. And so there's not a reason to think that he won't, regardless of what happened at Nebraska. So that's the UCF situation. BYU. I mean, that was the other big story coming in. We've talked about what Kalani Sitake said. Jake Retzlaff probably not going to be on the team.
Yeah, I think.
What did you kind of make of
some doubt? I think there was some doubt. I think reading between the lines and talking to people. I mean, the Retzlaff thing is done. I think that's. I don't think it's dependent on. Well, can he find another home? I think that relationship is severed. I don't know a lot of the details there, but I think that's done. And I it's hard to. You feel bad sort of just being like, well, they have no shot to win the Big 12, but it's hard for me to see it. It's a huge loss for them. They don't have anybody behind him that you can feel great about. Trayson Bourget has played some, but I mean, BYU was on the short list of favorites, and I mean, you lose your quarterback. It's not rocket science. That's a huge piece of your team. It's the most valuable piece of your team. A good player, a lot of experience. BYU is going to have to pull some magic to even contend for the Big 12, especially in a league this deep. And that's the thing about this league is, and some of the coaches were kind of talking about this, like you're in other leagues. There's some weeks, we can play not great and still win. I don't think that there's everyone in the Big 12 has a pulse. Everyone can beat you. And they are the only league like that. Yes, they don't have the top end teams most likely, but the bottom of the Big 12, this league is the most like the NFL because there's so many teams that can win the league. And it was interesting. I did want to ask because I had a very strong feeling about it and answer and talking to people. Leaving the week, Chris, did you leave with one team impressing you and feeling like they changed their stock in your mind more than any other?
I think maybe the team that quietly felt the best about itself. It's the same as yours, and that's the Utah Utes.
Yep.
They feel very confident about what
I think they should.
They have probably one of the best offensive lines in the country. They grabbed one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the portal, Devin Dampier from New Mexico.
Extremely fun guy if you have not watched him.
Yes. After hiring his offensive coordinator, Jason Beck. So he's coming into an offense that he already knows. Now, I have a lot of questions about their wide receivers that they have to replace. But Utah is going to be good defensively. And talking to Kyle Whittingham, talking to the players, the whole Cam Rising drama of the last 2 years just kind of sucked the energy out because it was like every week either he'd be hurt or he got hurt, or every week you didn't know if he was going to come back. And that's one of the reasons Coach Kyle Whittingham is back. He has already named for the second time Morgan Scalley as his replacement. But he said last year was probably the most unenjoyable year of his coaching career, and he was not going to go out like that. This is a guy who knows how to win and knows how to get to that high level and is determined to get there. And I think has put a team together that can.
I think so. I'm with you on Utah. I think, again, if you're good on the lines, all your other stuff looks so much better. Those receivers might not be world beaters, Chris, but guess what? If Devin Dampier has 5 seconds to throw every time and they can run the ball, those receivers don't need to be Superman. They can just get open.
Devin Danbury, who ran for over 1,000 yards last year at New Mexico, very big time runner. I imagine this will be a pretty run heavy offense because they can do a lot of things. But behind that offensive line, yeah, I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be really good. I mean, I look at the Big 12 and I look at like 9 teams that if you told me they won the league, I wouldn't be surprised. I would say Arizona State, maybe BYU, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, Utah. That's 9 teams who, like, if you told me they won the conference, I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
And that's to what you said. Like, every week is something. And it makes it entertaining week to week. But Brett Yormark acknowledges, like, you need 1 or 2 to kind of emerge, to really stand out, to be the bell cows who carry for the league. And that comes to why they got rid of the preseason media poll, which we haven't talked about yet. But basically, Yormark admitted, like, they were like, look, Arizona State was picked last, and then they didn't have any major wins for a while. And then people finally started to take them seriously late in the season, and they were too far down the seeding at that point to get into that number 3 spot for the champions. So they said this is football only. Do you buy that? Kenny Dillingham didn't seem to care.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because perception is such a huge thing, and if they have the last place team, it feels like, well, this is temporary, this is smoke and mirrors, and by the end of the season, I don't know how you could watch Arizona State and think that was fraudulent or they got lucky. Like, I don't want to get into relitigating TCU 2022, but that was a team that won games in ridiculous ways. Like, that was probably a 9-win team. Arizona State was pretty much who Arizona State was last year. That was a good team, a really tough team. Really, we talked to Kenny Dillingham about it. I think it's satisfying for him to come back after a pretty tough year 1 where they had like 8 quarterbacks get hurt and just everything that could go wrong in an already really difficult situation kind of went wrong for them. And then to have, Kenny Dillingham, obviously a big culture guy, a big scheme guy as well, to have them bounce back and then do it at his alma mater was really satisfying. And that was a team that, especially the way that they played against Texas, even though they lost, really validated their season because nobody was giving them a chance. Not the people on this podcast, of course. Nobody was giving them a chance, and they probably should have won that game. So, yeah, I think it's fair.
And actually, I asked Kenny Dillingham how often he thinks back to that 4th down play in overtime against Texas, and he said all the time. And his lesson from that was basically that they had overcomplicated that moment. Normally, they keep it pretty simple, knowing that if you check into a defense, the offense is probably going to check to max protect, and then the defense can then check out. But because they had basically put it in reverse for that specific game, they couldn't check out in time. And his lesson from that was like, just coach things the way you coach them all the time, even in the biggest games. And he wasn't like beating himself up over. He took it as a learning moment. And I found that his answer to be really interesting.
Well, because he was telling us he knew that because they weren't showing a ton of pressure. They didn't like put like 8 guys at the line, but he knew they had the max, the cover 0 on. Texas probably figured it was coming. And he said, like, he realized as soon as Texas checked, I don't have a check out of this. And I think, he didn't say this as much, but I'm sure it was going in slow motion in his mind because he knew, oh no. Like, you're asking
he said after the game. He said after the game that it was his fault.
Yeah. And so, again, I think this is a lot of why a lot of people are so high on Kenny Dillingham is, 1, there's a level of accountability there. 2, there is like it doesn't have to be weird. It's just like, yeah, I screwed up. And also, like, I'm going to tell you what happened and it was interesting and it's football and it's not rocket science. I think sometimes a lot of coaches think like, oh, I can't really explain football stuff because nobody can understand it, and I don't want to get in the weeds. Like, that's not that complicated.
Or just that you can't be open, or that people
or like say like, oh, I did this or that. Because Kenny could have said, well, we just got to execute better. I got to be better. And it's like, well, what does that mean? But he explained it in a way that was obvious. And it's like, not, I mean, it is sort of, not in a pejorative way. It is sort of his fault, but it's like,
but he said it in a way that you believe him that it's not going to happen again. Like that he learned from his mistake. And that's the accountability I think every fan wants to hear. And that's why it's a lot of these young coaches. It's very refreshing that they're just who they are. And that's why kids are relating to them and they'll trust them. Like, hey, if I mess up, coach will get on me. Coach messes up. He knows it too. That's that trust relationship that it's so obvious.
Yeah, it's interesting that now that you say that, I think it does maybe step into why some of, not all of the Saban tree, but I think a lot of the Saban tree felt like, I got to be Nick Saban. I'm going to go to my program. I got to do things the way Nick did. I mean, obviously, I covered
you dealt with that with Jeremy Pruitt,
and I think Jeremy was maybe one of the worst offenders of this because, like, even the way that they warmed up before the game and all the stuff they did was like exactly like Alabama. And I think I asked him probably a couple times, what are the things that you stamp on the program that like are the biggest differences between how you want to run a program and how things were done in Alabama? He didn't really have a good answer, but I think a lot of that. Like, well, if a big school's hiring me, they're hiring me thinking I got to be the next Nick Saban or that I got to be this way, and they're getting Alabama. And I don't think Kenny thinks that way. I don't think Kenny thought like, oh, Arizona State's hiring Mike Norvell. Arizona State's hiring Gus Malzahn. They're hiring Kenny Dillingham, and he's very comfortable in his own skin. And I think that reads to players. And, they were a surprise team last year for a lot of reasons, and he's brought in a lot of talent and I hope they're in for the long run because I think he's the kind of guy who's well suited for the new world of college football. So,
and he said this to us, and he said it publicly many times. Like, he's not leaving Arizona State.
Yeah,
like he's at his dream job, and that if you're an Arizona State person, you have to be feeling really.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Really good about. Let's run down the rest of the Big 12 teams real quick, and something interesting we got. Arizona, Brent Brennan, really interesting about, like, they kind of had to purge the roster a second time around because he came in so late in that first year. And he said basically the second time around, if guys want to get in the portal, then go. We want that. He said that first year he spent so much of his time trying to convince guys to stay.
Please stay. He's like, I'm done now.
And this time around, he's like, no, we just want guys who want to be here. And he feels very good about the team going into year 2. So we'll see with that. Baylor, Dave Aranda's always a really interesting guy, very thoughtful guy. Sawyer Robertson might be like kind of a surprise breakout quarterback if you don't know who he is. They have Auburn in week 1. They should be really interesting.
It was interesting. I think Sawyer is an interesting guy. He came over, to Baylor after Baylor already had brought in DeQuan Finn, who was, if I'm not mistaken, the MAC Offensive Player of the Year.
Correct.
Right? Yes. a lot of hype. You talk to people that offseason, there was a lot of like, I don't know about this guy. And it's like,
well, also
okay.
like Dave Aranda's going to get fired. They lose to Colorado, the Hail
Yes.
Mary thing, and
Mhm.
everyone thinks he's about to be fired. And we asked Dave Aranda, like, what changed after that? And he said, we started running the ball. We played Texas Tech the next week, and we run the ball and get like 7 yards, and everybody's like, whoa, we can actually run the ball. And then that kept going. They scored like 50-something points, and now they come in as like one of the many Big 12 favorites. So Baylor could be a big step-up team. Cincinnati, Scott Satterfield said he feels like it's his best team he's had. They've got a really good tight end. Sorsby's a pretty solid quarterback. It's good.
They bring back like their 4 best players, which the number of teams that did that last year is short. And listen, like Cincinnati, I know that it hadn't been what it's been, since Luke Fickell left. I mean, even for Luke Fickell, it hadn't been what was been at Cincinnati. But I do think there's a good chance this is probably the best Cincinnati team maybe since that playoff team.
Is it enough to win enough and save his job? We'll see.
Mhm.
Houston, Connor Wegman, the quarterback there. It's going to be really interesting. Willie Taggart, as we know.
Willie Fritz.
It's Willie Fritz. And he turns around every program he goes to. He always takes these teams and builds them back up. But we asked him, like, can you do it the same way in today's game? And he admitted no. He's like, no, I can't just do what I've done everywhere else. And so he knows, again, talent acquisition as quickly as possible. And he feels better about it.
Yeah. We want to hit on West Virginia and Rich Rod being back.
Yeah, West Virginia, Rich Rod. It's another situation where like he needs to win pretty quickly, and he's kind of doing the roster like that. It's not like, oh, we're going to build this back up in 2 to 3 years. Like, we got to go try to get to a bowl game now. And he knows that, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And the players, by the way, were you in there when I asked about the runaway beer truck?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so I kind of asked the players, like, it's been a minute since Rich Rod was actually at West Virginia. I was like, what did you know about the first time around? They're like, not that much. You kind of knew he'd been there, but we kind of been Googling, and they're like, I was kind of learning. And I said, like, if I say the words runaway beer truck to you, do you know what I am talking about? And one of the players did, and it was explained to the other ones, like Schmidt, because they were mentioning that Owen Schmidt, the most fullback of all fullbacks, there are some bent Owen Schmidt face masks in the Hall of Traditions at the team facility. And they were like, he was like, that's the runaway beer truck. And we were talking about the Fiesta Bowl. And I was like, nobody had ever called him that. But then from thenceforth, because it was so insane, that he has became the runaway beer truck. And I think that part of it is, you talk to recruits. This was one thing that was really surprising to me as I started to do this job and start to work in college football. When you talk to recruits, I would say, Chris, 70% did not watch a ton of college football until they started being recruited.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like, I watch Pat Mahomes, and I mean, this has changed, but like right now, I think, I watch Pat Mahomes highlights on YouTube, and like Instagram reels of Travis Kelce juking people, or like Stephon Diggs running routes. There's not a lot of like college football fans. And then when they start getting recruited and they start looking at these programs and going to games, kind of open this world up, then there's like very specific eras that they learn from. And that was, I mean, for me, I was like, well, that's kind of weird. But then you just realize it's just,
honestly, I do think the lack of video game is part of that too.
I think that's true.
And
for sure.
So that'll be interesting. Iowa State, just a very confident in itself. Rocco Becht should be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. They've got a bunch of new wide receiver transfers in, and Matt Campbell is just like, we always know kind of how to bounce back, which they've always done. And last year was maybe their best season ever, nearly winning the Big 12. I think they might take a bit of a step back, but they'll be as tough out as anybody. Kansas, they feel good about Jalen Daniels, but I think I got to see it to believe it that he gets through a full season.
Yeah, and how much of the slow start last year, it was a lot of close games. The record was really bad. They were closer than we thought. And then, beating 3 top 25 teams in I don't know, it was consecutive weeks, it was consecutive games, was pretty wild after people had kind of given up on them. So can you continue that on? I'm not a big believer in momentum from one season to another unless you sort of discover new players. Like Baylor figuring out that Sawyer Robertson was their guy, I think changes Baylor. Kansas kind of is who Kansas is. They've kind of been a little bit like this team for the last sort of 3 years that Jalen Daniels has been a part of it. Obviously, no Andy Kotelnicki last year, but I have questions about how much the end of last year will carry over to this year. But I do think they're one of those teams that can compete for the league for sure.
Kansas State, the sense is Avery Johnson has got more muscle on him. Knows he probably
15 pounds, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Knows he should not be taking as many hits as he does, and the coaches have been trying to tell him that because you're going to need help.
And he did say one of his favorite purchases was his sleep number bed, which he got in. It was good. He was like, yeah, I had a bad bed before, and it was like caved in the middle, and I'd wake up with back pain. Which, as a quarterback who runs a lot, you don't need your bed also assaulting you. So he got a sleep number bed. And he was like, it's like the best thing ever because I didn't have any more back pain. So Avery Johnson, America's favorite 50-year-old college quarterback.
Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy did not say that's not why he reads the newspaper because it's garbage. He was very kind of nonchalant about almost getting fired last year. We talked to him about that. He was just like, people want to have conversations, so we have the conversations. But he's also like, nobody knows Oklahoma State football better than me. I've been in this for 40 years, basically at this point.
He's 100% right about that. So
correct.
Nobody defines that program more than him. Maybe in the history of the program, right? I don't think so. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, and he completely overhauled this staff. He's admitted some of the coaches he hired he had never seen coach until spring practice. It's the first time he did that, which is kind of interesting for a coach to admit.
Inadvisable, I would say, not to admit it, but to do it.
And he last season was their second. No, it was the worst season he's ever had there. But they were also top 20 team 3 of the previous 4 years. It's not like this has been a slow decline. It was just one horrible season. That he pointed to several things. He said, we didn't get the quarterback play we wanted. We had injuries and all this stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I'm never going to count out a Mike Gundy program.
The thing that concerns me is Mike Gundy. If you were ranking the coaches who don't love the new world of college football, I mean, Gundy's probably top 3. I'm going to pay an incoming freshman. How much? I got to pay this guy how much to stay out of the portal? He doesn't love that. And I think there's a lot of resistance to just saying, hey, this is what it is now. I mean, Oklahoma State, they didn't just have a bad season last year out of nowhere. They didn't have a lot of talent other than Ollie Gordon. Yeah. And I think when you look at, why did Oklahoma State slide? Well, I don't think they have as many good players. Look at the 2011, 2012 team that they had and all the guys that on them, not just Brandon Whedon and Justin Black. Justin Gilbert and Broderick Brown's corner on that team, and forgetting a linebacker that was really good, but they had really good defensive line. Their offensive line was pretty experienced. Like that, that you had good players, and I think to get good players now, you got to make some concessions that I don't think Mike Gundy loves making, and I'm curious how that goes moving forward.
We don't know who the quarterback will be, but House Haney potentially.
That's who my money's on, but we'll see.
Very fast player. Keep an eye on him. TCU, we're going to have a story about it later, but they had interesting feelings on the Colorado game 2 years ago as we compared it to coaching Belichick now. Basically, like Sonny Dykes were like, a lot of us, we kind of got caught up in the hype of Deion Sanders. And so they're really trying to make sure they don't do that for North Carolina. Sonny Dykes, as you mentioned, as we talk about that 2022 team, correct to point out that they beat Michigan in the playoff that year. Like for all the people, he's sick of people ragging on them for the Georgia loss as if they didn't deserve to be here. And he's right. And one of the people who keeps pushing that comment is Nick freaking Saban. And Sonny's like, we were the only team that beat Michigan for 2 years, and things have been very up and down since then, but Josh Hoover, I really like him.
Yeah, he's a good player.
TCU, again, one of those teams in the Big 12, just should be a solid team, good enough to win. We'll see.
Because the league is so good, it's crazy that there's so many teams that could win 9 games, and there's a lot of teams that could go 5-7 too. And I think that that difference between going 5-7 and 9-3 in the Big 12 is razor thin. Yes. And I can't remember which coach said this, Chris, but I think it's true. And I think it's just that simple, that whoever wins this league is going to be the team, or whoever wins this league will have kept their quarterback the healthiest, or at least kept him healthy. And that doesn't mean playing. That means my shoulder's not, screaming at me every time I throw. That means I don't have a bum ankle that I'm hobbling around on. Like, by healthiest, that doesn't mean just playing games. That means like feeling good and healthy. And it's one of the reasons why I like Utah. Got to tell you.
No, I think that was Sonny Dykes, because he was like, in 2022 we had a lot of injuries, but we kept our quarterback. Max
kept going.
And so that's it for Big 12. Again, we learned a lot from a lot of teams. Really wish more people in college football would be as open as they were. I think it's helpful for the conference. We also sat down with Brett Yormark, the commissioner. I wrote a column about it, about his stance on the playoff. That discussion is obviously ongoing. His feeling is we don't want the 4-4-2-2 to guarantee 2 bids for the Big 12, even if right now that would help the Big 12, because then you're locking yourself into second-class status. And he's like, I, as a commissioner, cannot put a cap on our programs, because Arizona State was 1 play away from going to the semifinal. BYU turned out to be a lot better than people thought last year. They just didn't buy it until late in the season. Texas Tech is spending all this money trying to rise up. Like, the Big 12 is fine with 5+11 with the hope that they can invest and get better and get more teams in. So obviously the Big 12 does not determine what the playoff will be, but he set the tone once again at the Media Days month that 5+11 he feels is the way to go for the playoff. Real quick, next week, SEC Media Days, Arch Manning will be there. David, is there anything you're interested in going into SEC?
It's talking season. If again, if it's not being able to sit down and have conversations with people, and the biggest thing with media days, it's like at SEC media days, you don't learn that much. The coaches kind of have their stump speech. They're not going to say that much about their team necessarily. Like, the podium stuff is just not that interesting. But if you can just sit down with people, not to belabor the point, the SEC is never going to do this. Maybe the Big Ten does it at some point. ACC, call us. Let's do it. We just had a whole show on the Big 12 because we learned a lot this week. We want to talk about kind of some of the stuff that we learned. We're going to be writing about it at The Athletic. I can't wait for it. I'm going to go into the season knowing a lot about these teams because we sat and talked to them, and you learn stuff and you get a feel for who guys are and where they're and kind of how they're walking going into the season. It matters.
Before Media Days existed, there used to be was basically a sports writers airplane
the Skywriters tour.
Skywriters tour. A bunch of national reporters or just reporters would get on an airplane and fly to every team in a conference and talk with the coach. And that's kind of how that eventually became the idea of Media Days. I think the Big Ten started back in the 70s. I think SEC might have been the 80s. So
I kind of going back to that. That'd be fun.
It would be a lot of fun. So SEC next week. Neither of us will be there, but if anything interesting is said, we'll talk about it. I'll be at Mountain West in Las Vegas next week. You will be home, but then the following week you'll be going to ACC.
Part of ACC, and then I'll be at the American.
So we'll have more Media Days coverage in the coming weeks, as well as in college football. The big college football review show will be next week. Next week,
I'm hoping to play the game at some point.
You will be playing a lot of the video games. So before we get out of here,
yes,
we have to end the show with the segment we always end it with, which is Remember Some Guys.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is the segment of the show where we name a former college football player and we go, yeah, remember that guy? And in the spirit of the Big 12, I have to go with one Todd Reesing, former Kansas quarterback, had that unbelievable 2007 season when they started 11-0. He put up 76 points on Nebraska, which was like, you got to remember, like, Nebraska, Kansas, one of the most lopsided rivalries in the history of college football. To see what Kansas did against Nebraska that year,
Mark Mangino lit them on fire. That was insane.
And he had 2 more really good years at Kansas as well. So Todd, when I think like what's a classic like Big 12 player, and I'm thinking like an undersized quarterback.
Yeah, he had the loose sleeves. It was a good look for him. Chris, are you aware of
real quick? By the way, I wanted to
Yes.
look it up. The all-time series, Nebraska leads 91-23-3.
I would have thought
in
worse,
that,
but
yeah.
yeah. Chris, are you aware of the pejorative nickname that Mizzou fans have for Todd Reesing?
No.
It is Sod Reesing because after the safety that decided the 2007 Missouri-Kansas game, his face was slammed into the dirt of the end zone, and he came up with a gigantic piece of turf in the face mask. It was a tough look for him. Great career, very fun player. I was going to remember Kerry Meyer and Des Briscoe, his 1-2 punch. Kerry Meyer, I was Googling before the show.
No, you can only get to pick one guy.
I'm not remembering them. I'm just bringing them up. We're not remembering them. This is unofficial guy remembering.
Okay.
Kerry Meyer is a dietitian in New York City. How about that? Small time.
How about that?
Yeah. I'm going to, in honor of you, Chris, remember a Nebraska player, Alex Henry. Not just O. Henry like the candy bar. Henry. I think I had that right. Anyway, a Swiss Army knife for the Bo Pelini-led Huskers. He kicked field goals. He punted. And he was a kickoff specialist. And he was like the best at that. All three of those. It was unbelievable. Did not have a great NFL career, surprisingly. But
he was a 4th round pick.
I know. Like, he was a spectacular prospect, but Michael Dixon, he was not. But a very fun college player. You don't see that then, before that. Well, I mean, it's early enough. You go back far enough, sure, you'd see it. You don't see that really much now. Guys, 1, doing all those things, or 2, being good at doing all those things. So shout out Alex Henry. I enjoyed watching him play for a long time. Huge leg, good punter, Alex Henry. You remember that guy?
I actually did not remember that guy. That's the thing. You mentioned him. I had to look him up. He had the total accuracy, field goals and extra points, 96.7%, NCAA record.
Yeah,
So,
dude was a baller. Mm-hmm.
Really one of the best to do it. Because that was when I was in college. He was at Nebraska, I think, 2007 to 2010. That was exactly my college career.
There you go.
I was at Michigan State. So I was like locked in on Big Ten at that time. While you were
I don't know what it is, Chris, about like can't miss elite college kickers. The hit rate in the NFL is very poor. Roberto Aguayo, obviously the highest profile there. Henry was one of those. I'm missing a couple guys, but there's a lot of kickers that are like the best kickers you see in college, and they go to the pros, and it doesn't quite. That's a weird dynamic. You would think it'd be the exact same. I can't explain it.
It's a volatile position. So that will do it here for Bunch Formation. Again, bunchformationpod@gmail.com for all the feedback. Again, we will have our big college football 26 review episode next week. We'll have a person from EA Sports on the show. Looking forward to that. It's talking season, man. And some people don't like us because of that. So hopefully nobody gets mad at us next week. And that's going to do it here. For David Ubben, I am Chris Vannini, and we will talk to you next week.
And please bring back the turnover chain, but leave the Bulljunk. See you next week.